Um, hey guys, just here with Sever from Elrond. He's the blockchain project manager, and he very kindly agreed to come on and have a chat and just discuss the developments at Elrond and how he sees the development of Elrond into the future and its importance to the blockchain space as a whole. So, just as an introduction, I suppose maybe just ask how you yourself got into blockchain, and then what excites you about working in the space as a whole.
Okay, so happy to be here. Thank you for the invite. You introduced me as the blockchain project manager. I'm just a blockchain project manager, which is a funny thing to say in a startup, because project managers in startups don't really go well hand in hand. It's more about jumping on whatever there is to do at all the time. Which makes the actual job of a project manager quite complicated, because a project manager has timelines, has budgets, has resources allocated, and then in startups, like, none of that matters, because everyone is just pushing forward as fast as they can, which is awesome. But still, I got this job title because my role at Elrond is like a mix of like a lot of things, right? I do business development, marketing, communications, internal, let's say, project management, task management. I also stay close to the community, so it's a lot of things. So just project manager is like a blanket term for whatever.
So it's kind of like just whatever needs to be done gets done.
Yeah, it's I have a, I don't know if it's a unique set of skills, but I think it's quite unique, at least in Elrond. First of all, because I'm, well, not old, but I'm senior, right? So like I'm 40 years old, and I've been working. Oh God, it's been more than 20 years now, right? So I've been working since I was 19 years old, and I was very experienced in everything IT. I'm not a developer, but I do work with IT, and I started doing like odd jobs, fixing computers, printers, all of that, and then I got into grew into like more application management, consultancy, even management roles in like international corporations and so on. But then none of that mattered as soon as I discovered blockchain, right? I got the blockchain brain bug early in 2017, and I was amazed. So I had heard about Bitcoin before in 2014, but it felt like some computers in China thing. I didn't really get it. but then but then once I found out about Ethereum and about a decentralized environment that is completely programmable and yet nobody can control, I was like, wow, this is going to be transformational. I mean, the implications are absolutely amazing, right? Like, if you think about it, um, you know, if you think about making a phone call now and how it used to be like a few years ago, it's like you would dial the operator, like, who do you want me to connect? They flip a few, cables in there, probably even listen into your conversation, right? Or like how, and right now I just call you, right? And well, I won't say that nobody is listening in, but in theory, nobody's listening in. Or like the same with like mail, right? Like someone would send you a letter, right? And like the postman would be like, what's in here? And like, they know all the hassle all these aspects of our lives where we were used to have middlemen, and now it's outrageous to think that there can be middlemen, right? Like with email or phone or so on. I think it's going to soon be the same with value, right?
Yeah.
And I think blockchain really fixes that or enables this to happen, right? I have a I have two sons, but I have an older son, and he was asking like, Dad, what's TV? It's like, well, it's kind of like YouTube, but you can only watch what they want when they want you to. Like, who's they? It's like, don't get me started. So, so, so there are a lot of things that we take for granted right now, or maybe that we've seen changing over the last few years that seem ridiculous to you, because I see that you're young, and definitely to my son. Like, how how could you put up with content just being scheduled and so on? Why couldn't you pick what was wrong, right? And I think in a short period of time we'll feel the same way about money, right? It's like, what you didn't own your own money. Wasn't it like yours? You had to put it somewhere, you gave it to someone, you had to pay for it, you have to buy your own money from like machines. Like how crazy is that, right? And if you think about it, it's super crazy. And if you think about how the world of finance works today, and how, you know, value is traded around always via proxies and always via you know, kind of like these middlemen that they take a cut of everything and they know exactly what you're doing, and also because of their role, they also have the ability to grow, I think, beyond the role, right? To kind of like control more, like, I don't know, I don't want to get into like banking, fractional ownership, fractional reserves, and all that, but it's not a perfect system. And blockchain technology has the ability to give all these systems the technology that they can evolve with, right? So I'm not a believer that blockchain will replace anything or everything. I'm not down with that. I think it's just another piece of technology that will be used to improve things, right? Like the internet didn't replace anything. It just, you know, it just helps things get better, right? And I think uh, blockchain is like this final piece of internet technology that actually makes the internet what it was supposed to be, like a peer-to-peer data exchange system, right? Except it's just not peer-to-peer anymore. It's just always a proxy in the middle, and so on. And just blockchain fixes all that, right? And I think I found this extremely exciting because I realized, well, this means that blockchain can go into basically any kind of business vertical. So like whenever there's an online component, if you add blockchain to it, it's immediately safer, faster, cheaper. Well, maybe not faster, but you know, we're getting there. Definitely cheaper, right? Because you pay like small amounts for a transaction, and we'll get to that also to the discussion. But just you pay just a small amount for a transaction on a system that already exists, and then you solve a lot of problems. No subscriptions, no, you know, I don't know, buying licenses for anything or signing up for accounts or whatever. It's just a transaction on a system that is out there, right? So I think this is powerful, and I think this is going to be transformational. And as soon as I understood all that, I was like, screw this, right? So I got, yeah. So I got started reading about blockchain and started reading about all these projects and so on, and I started investing in the middle of the 2017 ICO bubble, and it was crazy those days. I'm not sure if you were in there, but it was crazy. So you would buy literally any kind of token on an ICO and then list it immediately on something that was called Ether Delta, which was kind of like the first decentralized exchange, and you would just flip it for 10x, 100x, whatever. So everything was crazy. I mean, if you see the mania that is right now in DeFi and all these projects and so on, just amplify that, you know, several times over, and just add to that the fact that uh, compared to right now, where there are people with experience in the market and they kind of know how to steer things, nobody knew anything, and everyone was dreaming. Like I was telling you earlier, wow, blockchain will change everything, and there's a new coin for this and that, and it was crazy. And I invested in a lot of projects, and at some point I even started writing about them. I was kind of like doing reviews and so on, but I was doing like lengthy reviews, like nobody cared to read too much, because nobody cares. Like, should I buy this or not? Just tell me. I don't care about fundamentals. I don't
How
care
much
about the
money? How
vision.
much money?
Yeah, give me something to invest in. Anyway, so I did that for a while. So I invested quite a lot. I made a lot of money, and I immediately lost it all. You know, when the eco bubble popped, you know, you hear all these guys, I exited at the top. Well, it was it was a semi disaster, but it was not that bad. So it was enough to keep me going, and I stayed active in the space, and I continued to do reviews of projects. I was getting better, so like more getting in depth and getting more closer to what, you know, what the tech really is about and what are the capabilities and so on. And I wrote this one review about Elrond. It's like, wow, I like this, what these guys are doing with sharding and so on. And Benjamin Minkus, like the CEO of Elrond, he read it and he reached out to me. He's like, dude, are you Romanian? He's like, yeah. Are you a developer? Oh, no. Well, anyway, let's talk, right? So long story short, I was able to turn my blockchain passion into basically a dream job that just changed my life completely.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
Here I
incredible.
am.
That is incredible. Like, and that, I suppose that is like similar to myself. Like, I would love to eventually at some point work in blockchain in some capacity. I only discovered it maybe for the first time last year, and like yourself, like initially I just saw it as a speculative asset where I would buy it and you would try to make some money from it. Like, so I started by buying Bitcoin last year, buying a little bit of Ethereum. Um, but it's only as you start to dig deeper into the like what it fundamentally is trying to achieve that you realize how powerful this shift is going to be. And it's almost like exactly what you were saying there. It's moving the world towards a more meritocratic, decentralized place where everybody everybody has access to a store of value and a medium of exchange relative to each other. Like, whereas at the moment, like centralized sources can kind of manipulate that a little bit. So obviously from my country, I'm from Ireland, like it's not so bad because the economy is quite stable. The government are relative, we don't always agree with what they do, but the currency is relatively stable. The economy is relatively stable. I understand that if I have a euro, it's probably going to be worth somewhat similar in a year, 5 years from now. But in countries that are less stable, this sort of technology has the effect to be far more transformational and maybe like narrow the inequality, the gap in terms of wealth of inequality in the world. If that would, and I assume that's a lot, like from reading of what you guys are trying to achieve, that's a large part of what you're trying. Actually, at the end, I had a question, but maybe like I might throw it in now because it leads on from what you were talking about. And I see in like the Elrond pathway that eventually you guys could see this being used by like banks and nations. And I know that's probably a little bit away now. But how could you eventually see the technology that you guys are building being implemented, theoretically or hypothetically, you know?
Mm-hmm. So uh, when it comes to like banks and state actors, right? So like these guys are usually like a bit more reluctant when it comes to like a public permissionless blockchain. It's like, what does it mean? Like, are you taking every ounce of control away from me, or what does it mean, right? So um, there's a there's this gap that needs to be that needs to be not removed, but kind of like climbed via a bit of like education and understanding and research, right? Because I think once even like actors such important as and let's say traditional conservative as these ones understand the power of a public permissionless blockchain and what it can do for them to help them, I think things will move away from reluctant and speculative and so on to a technology that can be used to increase efficiency, to reduce costs, to I don't know, to expand a business schedule, right? Like banks right now, they operate, I don't know, business hours, bank days, whatever that is, right? It's like crazy in our 24/7 world. Um, and like instant auditability, right? So like I told you I was working in large enterprises, and like what happens if you have an audit? So like there's an audit team, it comes there to the office and it says stop everything, right? Stop everything, because then you need to give them logs, you need to give them access to the system and so on. You need to prove that all your operations for whatever 1 year or whatever are compliant with the rules that you're supposed to comply with. So that takes days sometimes, right? And wasted effort and no progress and so on, just because these guys need to come there and check all the logs and make sure. And that's a lot of effort and lost opportunity for both ends. With a public permissionless blockchain, it's instantly auditable. It's like immediately saves a lot of time and cost for information that doesn't need to be out there in the open in clear format, right? You don't need to put your data as is on the blockchain. You just need to put a hash on it of it, right? So like nobody knows what the hash means, but you can check if the hash of the if the data you have in your system, if you hash it, corresponds to the hash that is written on the blockchain, which immediately means that it has not been tampered with, or it has been tampered with, right? So like all these things, right? It's just a simple example, but there's so much that blockchain technology can do for such actors, and you know, once they get it, and once they are able to upgrade their own operations and processes to include blockchain technology, it will be game changing in the beginning. And I think we will soon be at the point where certain operations will require to have certain blockchain components in their technology stack just to be compliant with a certain standard, right? And standards are important. So like if you want to have like access to certain markets or access to certain customers or to, you know, certain providers and so on, you first need to be certified in certain areas. So I believe it will be mandatory. Like if you want ISO, whatever, your business to be ISO something certified, which is very important, you will have to have something on blockchain, right? So this is more how I see these things progressing, right? So like banks and governments and so on, they shouldn't fear blockchain technology. They should rather understand it and embrace it, and make sure that they implement it in a way that is the best applicable way for them. And then once they get this, they will see, well, this is just a system, a transactional system of information and data and value that anyone can use, and it's so super cheap to use. And if I use this instead of like my internal systems that require maintenance and blah blah blah, they, you know, there's even a business case there, right? So I think this is more the approach where things have to go. But it, like I said, it requires a bit of like education and understanding for companies and state actors. Like even now, I mean, probably in Ireland is better. I'm from Romania. There's still a lot of paperwork here. It's like a lot. It's like incredible. You have to go with this paper from one desk to the other to get it signed and so on. It's like, why, right? So anyway, so like you can see even reluctance to adopt digital, right? So blockchain is like next after digital. So it will be a while. It won't happen overnight, but I think so. It won't happen overnight for maybe, let's say, relatively advanced economies, but like in places such as Africa, for example, where they're just emerging right now, right? Like they will probably skip to blockchain, right? They will skip to blockchain. Like I don't know, the Chinese skipped desktop computers altogether. They went straight mobile, easy, right? Because the infrastructure was not there. Romania is like, we skipped cable and went straight to fiber. We have like some of the best internet like in the world in Romania, just because there was no expensive cable infrastructure, you know, that people invested in and then had to be replaced with fiber. We just put fiber there. So like this is kind of like an example of also like emerging economies, like also you were mentioning, that are struggling and so on. They can just skip to blockchain and make some serious improvements in a relatively short time frame.
No, that is very, very interesting. And I suppose like it almost just what you were saying about the data and the sharing of data, it's not that everybody has to see everything that happens, but it's just that for in the interests of transparency, you can verify everything that happened, but people only need to know as much as they need to know. So people get what they need to know when they need to know it, but you can verify that everything happened. I suppose that's quite important. Probably you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in the context of like, let's say banks and where people are transferring debts and banks are transferring debts and loans. So the things that go on behind the curtains of the financial system, like from a regulatory point of view, like that, there needs to be an element of accountability, but people don't need to know the exact details, but they need to know that the overall process is functioning the way it should be functioning, so that there is not like things like hyperinflation going to occur, danger of like debt collapses where like people are calling in debts but that they don't have access to, and little things like that. But and also another interesting thing, like exactly like you were touching on, is where we look at the environment and where currently value, most people would say like the most acceptable or most widely used store of value is gold, let's say, but to mine gold is quite inefficient for the environment, and it's quite like negative for the environment. We've got all these, so you're trying to transfer people from the mindset of having to store or mine the environment for physical value, because we want to let the environment regenerate, and moving towards just accepting a digital store of value that can be verified as scarce and is a lot easier to transfer and use as a medium of exchange at the same time. So it's almost providing a better store of value, but it's just trying to create that mindset shift in society that even though we don't have this in our hands, it is still as if not more a good store of value, if you want to call it that, than the physical assets. Because you see people debating, like there's a guy called Nicholas Taleb, and he's debating that like Bitcoin isn't a store of value because it's not physical, but at the same time it's also solving a problem where we're not harvesting the environment for physical value, because physical value has to be created from some resources, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. So I've seen Taleb's recent, well, not recent, but he calls Bitcoin like a speculative asset. There's no relation to inflation. It's like it can go to zero. It's like there's no correlation there. I don't agree with him, even though he's like a super intelligent guy, and but anyway, so I don't agree with him. I know, so like the consensus to give value to something, especially to gold, so like it happened over time for like a number of reasons that we don't even think about anymore, right? It's like it happened because gold is easy to mine. It's available in rich veins on Earth, like above ground, so you don't have to mine for it too much. Well, at least it was in the beginning. It's shiny, so like it tickles our survival instincts. Like, oh, I was able to spot water in the distance because it shines. So like there's like a reward mechanism associated with that. It's nice, it's malleable, it's easy to recognize, and so on. It has all these properties, and also there's a reasonable assumption that there's a finite amount of it. So like there's also scarcity, right? So like these properties were the ones that over time allowed people to give gold its value. But gold has no inherent value in those areas by itself. It's a great metal, it's a hyperconductor, and so on. But to put those things into value, I think it's wrong. So like you can move away the value of gold as a hyperconductor and whatever, and just look at the other properties and say, can we maybe easily and better and cheaper and more efficiently replicate these in a digital area? And like you said, yes, we have done so already. So no more need for putting people to work into mines and for destroying Earth resources and so on, just so we feel comfortable assigning value to an ingot of gold, which is stamped and stored in some other facility, and you just get a paper like you own gold. It's like, what is that, right? What do I actually have here, right? It's like some people get gold delivered to their homes, like, anyway, crazies. So so what you want to park value into something meaningful on long term, right? So like if you abstract all that and all the historical things and just focus on the properties which are important, you nailed it. Digital currencies have these properties. So it's just a matter of time until consensus shifts away from like metals and hurting the planet and physical security and forced labor and whatever is going on there with gold. I'm pretty sure it's not Ivy League engineers digging in the ground there. So obviously cryptocurrencies can definitely change all of that, and I think they have started to do so already.
No, I think so too. I think they're beginning to, like, obviously it's a slow process, but they're beginning to get a wider, like, they're becoming more people are accepting their properties more. And so I might ask you now, if that's okay. So obviously Elrond experienced like really good growth and adoption over the last, like, say 9 months, especially since you launched like the mainnet and launched Maiar and launched staking and all these really, really nice things that have happened and that have just increased the accessibility, increased the value of Elrond. So like I think the numbers I checked yesterday, it was nearly like 550,000 accounts and 11 million of Elrond eGLDs are staked within the system, which is, for people who don't know the economics, it's like almost 65% of the supply. And I suppose like a question is like it kind of goes back to what you were saying there about how do we give these assets their value? obviously staking is the process through which we're giving these assets their value in the context of this network. For Bitcoin, it's obviously the proof of work mechanism. But I suppose, what do you believe is more important for creating value on Elrond? Is it the amount that is staked, or is it the price that is on the exchanges, and what are the price that people exchange it for, and what is the dynamic that creates the value behind Elrond, if that makes, or eGold, if that makes sense?
So it makes a lot of sense. So I think I think there are a number of things. So all those things that you mentioned make sense, but I think the end goal is to create a system which is fueled by a valuable resource, right? So like I just said, fuel, right? So like why is gasoline, whatever, valuable, right? Because so many things depend on it, right? Transportation, cars, heating, whatever, all these things, making plastics out of it, and whatever, right? So like we were discussing before, I think gasoline is not valuable on its own. Let's say there's no property to make it valuable, but rather the way it is used and the demand for it is what makes it valuable, right? And I think what we're trying, so not I think, I know what we're trying to achieve with Elrond is to create a backbone for a permissionless global financial system. And we're building slowly, bit by bit, but this is the end goal, that there are applications using the Elrond technology and therefore requiring eGold to function properly, right? So the value of eGold will come with this demand from real use case and real adoption, right? And I think people can see that we're heading in this direction with everything that we've been building. We started with a protocol, and then we deployed it onto a network, and then we allowed people to participate in operating it and staking, and then we created a nice interface for people to engage with it at a very let's say basic level. Even the Maiar is great, but it's basically you can just use eGold right now to send, receive, and stake, right? But the possibilities that are in there, and what we're building with Maiar and the entire ecosystem are crazy. So just a reminder, Elrond is like 9 months into its mainnet. 9 months, that's nothing, right? But we're building it piece by piece, right? So like the network, Maiar, all the tools around it, and obviously eGold to tie it up nicely as a fuel for this economy, right? By the way, we're talking about gold, so we named it eGold, right? Because it's like gold, but it has all those properties that we were discussing. Easy to understand for anyone who doesn't understand what coins made out of bits, or like what is this ether things, like what does it have to do with money, right? So I think this is also important. So this is the end goal, right? To create an infrastructure that is so amazing and works so good that people start building with it, and then there's like a demand for eGold, and this is where the actual value is coming. And in the meantime, people know that they're making a projection about where we have gotten just 9 months into the mainnet, and how fast we're progressing, and what kind of the work the team is doing, and what kind of the opportunities and so on. So obviously they want to be with the ecosystem on the long term, so they snag eGold out of the market and they put it for staking. Now this has a positive effect on the network security, because it costs less for a potential attacker to execute an economical attack, right? Because you need a certain amount of tokens, and if you have a certain amount of tokens, you can control a certain amount of validators, and when you control a certain amount of validators, you can try to, I don't know, mint the wrong block, mint money out of thin air, double spend it, and whatever, right? So this is one potential attack vector, and the more is at stake, the less chances for such vectors to exist, and the more the network security increases. The more the network security increases, the more valuable the use cases that can be built on top of it, right? Because we're talking governance, we're talking banks, and so on. So these guys won't go for a network that is, I don't know, small and cheap and whatever. They will go for a network that is proven to be stable and secure, right? Easy. And staking is one awesome way of achieving this strong security layer, right? And because people get this, it kind of like creates a spiraling circle of value, right? Because people get it, they put their money for staking, they earn the rewards, right? Which is, just to make an interlude here, it's like they earn rewards on a scarce asset, right? So, it's like there was this meme about this guy, like he was Bitcoin's like, you guys are getting paid for this, right? so, so, so it's very interesting. It also has a unique model. It has scarcity. It has it's a proof of stake system. So it has all this staking. It's efficient. It's not wasteful like proof of work, as we were discussing earlier with mining and so on. Um, and also, it has another interesting property. The more it is used, the more scarce it is, right? Just this is because there's a property inherent to the Elrond economics, which says that the transaction fees so issuance is offset by transaction fees, right? So the more adoption there is, the less eagle there will ever be, right? So it's also kind of like a race. It's kind of like a race for holders and so on, to try to bring in more people to build on the ecosystem and to use eGold and so on. So like everyone's incentivized to take things really in the right direction, right? And with all these incentives in place and all these mechanisms in place, we believe that there will be a very valuable ecosystem of motivated people to build on it and to build meaningful use cases like we were mentioning before.
No, I think that explains it perfectly. It's almost like so let's say theoretically, like I'm going to use stocks as an example, like Tesla, just because like they're so closely integrated with cryptocurrency at the moment. And let's say Tesla decide to build on or decide to release their stocks in like a synthetic form on the Elrond ecosystem, and 70% of the Elrond network is staked, and there's a total of, let's say, 20 million tokens available. So that means automatically there are only 6 million eGold tokens. So if you want to buy a Tesla stock, you need to access the eGold token. Therefore, that will drive the value up, and therefore, like, they're going to be relating the value to something else, like maybe fiat currency, but relative to a fiat currency, the value of Elrond will be far higher for each fractional amount that you buy. Would that be correct to an extent?
It makes sense because it adds to the velocity of eGold, right? So like the more utility there is and the more uses there are for it, it adds to the velocity, and the higher the velocity, this also helps like move value in the, let's say, the good direction.
So obviously, like, this will kind of tie into the next bit I had to ask. So like, obviously there's exciting projects coming up, like the MEX, the Launchpad, NFTs. I can name a lot of exciting projects. Like, as you were saying, you're building like a decentralized financial system, but all these projects that are coming up, specifically, let's say MEX and the Launchpad, because they're the ones that are probably closest to execution. Like, how important are these modules for like the ecosystem and the overall like vision of Elrond going into the future, if that makes sense? And obviously, it was really interesting what I was looking at the MEX distribution. I'm not sure if it's changed a little bit, but it was very, very nice to see that you were entirely focusing on creating the fairest distribution that you could. Even like, obviously, people who had staked more would receive more, but you were trying to make sure that it wouldn't proportionally become very unequal, if that makes sense. So that was a very, very nice very, very nice feature of the distribution. And obviously, if you're trying to create that sort of decentralized, fair distribution of wealth, accessible financial ecosystem, that's really important. But I'll let you chat about it. Like, but that was just something I thought was really cool, you know.
Yeah. I think you nailed it. You nailed all the important parts. So far in the development of the Elrond ecosystem, like I was mentioning earlier, right? Started with the protocol, with staking, Maiar, eGold, and so on. So what I've done so far, and like, by the way, tomorrow, ESDT, the Elrond Standard Digital Token Model, comes live on the mainnet, which basically allows for any kind of token to be created and transferred on the Elrond network, and native protocol cost and speed. So you will be able to transfer to make like 1,000 stablecoin transactions of any kind of value for like $1. And I was like, wow, right? And it will take between 6 to 20 seconds depending on which shard the accounts are in, but that's very technical. It's just never mind, half a minute and a tenth of a cent, and you've sent money anywhere in the world to anyone. So this is super powerful, right? And these are some of the properties that we work for the Elrond ecosystem to be able to build now the components that use it. So what we built so far is like kind of like the foundation, the infrastructure, and now the buildings start to pop up, right? So Maiar Exchange is probably going to be the one of the most important engines for value flow on Elrond network, because it will essentially allow people to exchange value between themselves. I don't know, any kind of tokens, any kind of, like you said, tokenized stocks, NFTs. NFTs will be huge, right? So all of any kind of value that can be tokenized will be tokenized and then will be exchangeable via the Maiar exchange. And um, this is what we want. But in order for us to be able to achieve this, the Maiar exchange needs to have a few properties, right? So like, because of the Elrond infrastructure, it has scalability, it has speed, it has low cost, right? Because of Maiar, it has also a beautiful interface, and also because of Maiar, it has, I think, 300,000 or more users on day one. Easy, right? So all of these are super useful and super powerful, but we have to remember that the governance and the value of such a platform, right? So like this platforms need to be governed carefully, and this is done via a token. And also these platforms capture a lot of value. They capture a lot of values. Like, look what happened to Uniswap, look what happened to Sushi, to PancakeSwap, and so on. So there's a lot of value transacted there, and a lot of that value is captured by the token. And if we want to enable our vision to have like a fully decentralized, global, permissionless financial system, this needs to start out as distributed and as decentralized as possible. We're not selling a token. We just want to make sure that it's evenly distributed, proportional, obviously, to anyone's stake in the Elrond ecosystem, and obviously rewarding those who are with us on the long term more. And this is why you were probably mentioning that people, they will be able to claim max tokens. It's not going to be an airdrop. So max tokens are earned by long-term supporters of the Elrond vision. Easy, right? And these guys will be able to claim these tokens based on their holdings of eGLD. And we believe that the distribution model will give anyone who is a part of the Elrond ecosystem also a piece of the Maiar exchange, right? We want to have it super spread out, so not just fast, not just inexpensive, not just scalable, not just decentralized. By the way, if we look at some of the more performant dexes out there or swaps out there, there's like obviously the centralization concerns. So Elrond doesn't have that. So all these properties will be super, super important. And I think this will kickstart like a serious growth moment for Elrond, because as we've seen these platforms get value and get usage and so on, we think that the platform, which is similar in functionality and maybe has additional functionalities, we'll probably reveal that later on, but with all the performance and properties and the distribution and the usage and the people in day one, I think it's going to be huge, right? And perhaps equally important, even though like let's say the volume will be on the exchange, the Maiar Launchpad. So it's not just a starter project like you have Polka starter or whatever, right? So like obviously it does have those features where people can invest in projects that are listed there, but we will add the Elrond magic to it. So we want to make sure that we were, it took like 3 years for the Elrond team. I wasn't even there in the beginning. It took 3 years to get funding, to go through very hard moments and so on. The team was solving impossibly hard problems night after night. only to be faced with a couple of existential crises like before lunch the next day, right? So it was hard, and this is a hardcore team that cracked it, that really went all out for it, and I think Elrond is now in a position to make a significant impact in the blockchain space and beyond. And we want to use all that knowledge to select the teams that can be game changers by themselves. And these are the kind of projects that we will pick and list on the Maiar Launchpad, right? So um, so it's not just going to be about volume and launching tokens and hosting lotteries for people to, I don't know, hate projects from the day they are launched because they lost the lottery and they couldn't invest. So screw this project, I'll just wait for the next. Yeah, there's no value there. And also projects who launch this way, they immediately antagonize a large community of possible supporters just because they didn't give them the chance to invest in a vision that they believe in, right? So like you can do all the best job in the world with a white paper and presentation and so on. You present your vision to everyone, but you can't get it. Well, this is not fair, right? This is not fair. And this is this is one of the things that we also want to make sure on the Maiar Launchpad, and this is also one of the purposes of the MPAD token, is that anyone holding the MPAD token will have a fair share of whatever is up there for investment, right? Proportional to their holdings. So uh, I think this is, in retrospect, it's like duh, right? And I think this is cool also for the users. I think it's cool also for the token because it will be able to capture a lot of value from also projects who are going to list there, and obviously it will help the funding process for fantastic ideas.
No, I
So
think that's a phenomenal explanation of how it's going to be, and I think that like answers a lot of questions in terms of how people will. Obviously, you can't go into really into the specifics, but I think that is a that is a great explanation as to how the token will be used, and because obviously you see on other like you're saying decentralized exchanges and other launchpad platforms where the focus isn't necessarily on quality. In my opinion, it's more focused on quantity. And I think like what you guys are doing is, if we touch back on the start where you were talking about like the ICOs and little bits like that, if everyone who has an interest in this space wants it to grow properly, we need to focus on not regulating it, but treating it treating it responsibly, and making sure that the technology is being used to progress society as a whole, and not just being used to try and like almost as a pyramid scheme to some extent, and that's obviously not what cryptocurrency is designed for, but it's what it's sometimes being used for. And it's just like, obviously you want people to have access to the system, but you also want to have quality with the intention of quality within the system, because that's what gives it the perception of value to people on the outside. Right? Would that be a fair assessment to you? And I think everything you said there means Elrond are like moving very solidly towards that goal. And there's just there's a few little more bits, and obviously you're very busy, so I won't like hold you too long if you have to go at any time. But I suppose how do you see Elrond interacting within the overall cryptocurrency ecosystem relative to, like, let's say Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, BNB, like all these other like big projects? And actually you touched on one of the things there where maybe some of them have some properties but not other properties, in terms of there's decentralization with maybe more centralization and other little bits. But I'll let you touch on that. But how do you see like Elrond with like its place in the space relative to those projects? And then on a broader economic perspective, stuff like the Maiar card and the stable coins, how will those integrate with like day-to-day society, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's take things one at a time. So first of all, Elrond's role in the broader cryptocurrency space, in the broader blockchain space. So our vision about blockchain and about the blockchain space is that the current blockchain space, even if it has been steadily growing, but it's like what, 100 million people, right? Which is a lot, right? But it's a lot of projects infighting for, sharing between them those million peoples and the attention of those people, where instead they could be collaborating to go to the next billions, right, who are out there and who need access to such technology, right? So we see a lot of like tribalism and a lot of infighting. Oh, you're a shitcoin, you're a whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. I think, and this is our approach at Elrond, that we want to have a holistic approach, and we want to acknowledge that Bitcoin will always be Bitcoin, that Ethereum has Vitalik. I'm a Vitalik fanboy, to be honest. I like him a lot, and I think he deserves like a Nobel Prize soon, right? So Vitalik is still there, and he built a community of very smart people and projects building on Ethereum, and Ethereum 2.0 is eventually coming. I don't know. I don't think it's smart to dismiss Ethereum's role in the future. I think it will be there, but also I think Elrond will also be there, right? Because Elrond is being built with all the properties and all the fundamentals that allow it to be a long-term, we call it internet scale blockchain, right? So we definitely are ready in building the technology to offer the infrastructure for any kind of application there. But it's naive to think that we will be the one blockchain in the world and no others will be there. We see a lot of blockchains like you mentioned. They exist there, and they're doing great things, and some of them are struggling and are trying to improve, and some of them are really improving and so on, which is great. And this is why we believe, so we want to work side by side with these projects to bring crypto to more people, right? Even if you think about money, it's like, oh, this is a money grab, right? Let's fight for money. Even if you think about like that, there's more money in the 8 billion people out there than in the 100 million currently in crypto, right? But it's not about money, right? So, with Benjamin and the Elrond team, they're not they're not about money. They're not about getting money. They're about changing money. That's what drives them. This is what the Elrond team. This is how it was founded. It was not founded to make a cash grab or whatever. There was a vision, and these guys set out to achieve it. So it will not be by playing a zero sum game with other projects, but rather just working together to really get this adoption.
Yes, I get you. So you think the whole space, and I agree with you fully that like I don't like the fighting within the community, if you want to call it, about which is better, because now I believe Elrond has all the properties of a elite project that has the quality to change, but we have to also respect all the other projects and the contributions they've all made to the progression of the ecosystem as a whole. Like, and then even what you were talking about there, like how, so it's about changing money, and let's say, how will this change money integrate into the day to day? So obviously, like, let's say the Maiar card is one of the things that's been mentioned, like the stable coins. You see other blockchains and other projects, and they're integrating with things like Visa and MasterCard. So obviously there's some sort of collaborations going on in those instances where they're trying to bring, like, obviously the cryptocurrencies into a place where you can spend them in a store, if that makes sense. But yeah, how do you see that kind of bridge being gap being bridged, if that makes
Yeah,
sense?
yeah. No, so that's great. So there's always, like I said, the team's vision is to change money, literally, right? So like even in the Maiar onboarding screen, if you remember it, is like, money is broken. This is how it starts, right? Money is broken, and we have a vision about payments. So just to go back a bit in history, like how it was before, in communications, where you had to, like, I don't know, write letters, right? You would maybe write one letter per month, and then there was this telegraph or whatever. Maybe you go to the post office once per day to send a message, and then it progressively got better. Communication got faster, cheaper, and more convenient, up to the point that right now, it's estimated that, like, Westerners, they send like 500 or 1,000 messages per day. And it's not just written messages. If you like something on Facebook, if you share this, if you read a message on WhatsApp and it's seen, you're telling someone something to that people. So like it's crazy to think what unlimited speed, bandwidth, and low, basically zero cost for communication did for communication. So like communication right now is not just people talking to each other. It's like machines talking to each other. It's like pieces of software talking to each other. And this is still communication, right? So we can definitely imagine, that blockchain will do for value transfer what the internet did for data transfer, right? And if you think about it like that, if you think that all of a sudden payments could be integrated into the very fabric of the internet, right? So like, just to give an example, I was doing some research, and it seems that, I think this was in 2018, the average value of a US consumer on the internet was $12. So like, this was the amount of money that vendors were hoping to get from the average US consumer by advertising towards them. So, so like, you can imagine, like, pay $12 per year, you could see no ads. Maybe it's, the numbers are wrong, but I think you can understand the issue here and the vision here, and like the transformational power of near instant and near instant payments, global payments at negligible fees, and what can this do for anything, everything, right? So like, no more clickbaity, shitty content, right? It's like, nobody cares about, but oh, you won't believe the 10 things that happened here. Like, number 3 will blow your mind, and then you just wasted few minutes of your time just to click a silly article, so you can just get this displayed some ads. And this is a waste of resources on so many levels, right? And I think this doesn't happen because people are not educated, or because those like reporters or whatever are evil. It's just because this is the limitation of the monetization system that we have in place right now. But if you could just make a micro payment every time you click a link or see a picture or like it, it's like nothing, money would be flowing out of your account from blockchain transactions. And then at the end of the day, you'd have spent like a full day online digital doing something like, okay, 3 cents, whatever. It's like, it's like nothing, right? It's like nothing. But those 3 cents add up, and they add up, and they add up over time. And I think, whatever happened will happen. I don't see like the vision, like what will be, but I know what can be, thanks to payments like this. So I think it's important, of course, to have a card and to have the ability to spend stable coins and eGLD and so on. Fine, this is the transition from where we are right now to where we are right now, but with a digital card, right? It's like still the same thing. But the real revolution will come when all this mindset about, and the paradigm shift about payments will come into play, and people will start getting it and implementing it, and we'll see business models that make no sense to today, that are still that will be possible thanks to blockchain technology.
No, that is a great explanation. Even what you said there about, like, let's say the monetization of media and information to an extent, like, I see great potential in that with regard to like Facebook. Like, let's say Facebook, for example, just because they're the most widely used social media, but there are huge conflicting interests between monetization and ethics. And that's where you start to see like the data almost being weaponized because a centralized entity has the control. And just through monetization, it is, and like obviously things like having an understanding of human psychology, like we're probably at times too smart for ourselves. People can influence large swathes of people to think in a certain way by distributing certain information to certain demographics, if that makes sense. And just by removing that power, and like you were saying, we probably don't even know what that's going to look like yet, but by removing the power from the centralized entities, we're going to create a whole new flow of information where it will be shared more authentically, based purely on like the individual's like their actual actions rather than what we think they're going to want. So it's like they do what they do, but we're not influencing them to do what they do. If that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. So maybe just for some closing words here, because I want to put blockchain technology into yet another context, perhaps a bigger one. So I was watching a documentary these days on Netflix about bias in AI. Quite interesting, very telling. But there was just this piece that stood out to me. So like there are like 9 companies in the world that are working on AI right now. 6 of them are in the US and 3 of them are in China, right? The ones in the US are trying to gather all the data to make you buy stuff. And the ones in China are trying to gather all your data to make you do stuff in a certain way, right? It's like, none of those things really appeal to me, right? So like this is not what AI should be. And hopefully and there are a number of other technologies coming up, right? IoT, right? All the quantum stuff, quantum computers, quantum communications, and so on, biotechnology, and all. There's like an explosion of innovation happening in any field right now. And I think out of all of them, so like blockchain is not the most important one, but I think it has a key role because it can be the differentiator between this technology doing good for everyone and this technology only being available to a certain people to do whatever they wish to do with it, right? Because blockchain technology can bring this layer of trust to the internet, that everything that is digital can be also trusted, because you don't have to trust anyone, you just trust it, right? Because it works like that because blockchain, right? So this is I think the so payments and money and value is like one thing, but trust, I think this is the end game for blockchain, and also why I believe it's super important in the context of the other technology innovation happening all around us right now, right? So I think this is by far the most important implication of blockchain technology.
No, thank you so much. I think that like I that was phenomenal. I really appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, so I will let you get back to whatever you have to do. Thank you very much, Sever. I really appreciate you coming on to have a chat. Like, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, and all the best.